Yeah. So good. So that's introduction to Kashmir. Of course, she's contributed hugely in the career, starting with Tata Share Registry, then with Tata Capital, and she's also done a lot of work outside the corporate, which is the Registrars Association of India, which she was a member of the committee for the depository system. So you can understand her expertise with handling the financial shares and capital markets issues. She was also a member of the advisory committee of Central Depository Services India Limited. I had an interaction this morning with CDSL. I was doing some voting on some propositions this morning with CDSL. Within CII, we have seen her since 2013. I've been like undershadowing her and understudying her, as a steering committee member in 2013. Then Maharashtra, IWN Maharashtra committee chair, then Maharashtra State Council chair in 2019 and 20. And before that, she was also the CII, she was chairman of the CII Committee on International Trade and Investment. I think many of us women have had an experience of being the first woman chairperson or the first woman who did this. And I think she was the first woman of the Trade and Investment Committee in CII. But what a male domain, it was. And she was the one who really broke that barrier. And so many other positions, Indo-Canadian Business Chamber, British Columbia India Network, Global Scots Network by the Scottish government. I want to play a short video. Can we have the video, Reshma? A short video on that was made for Kashmira's farewell by Tata Capital, admin people. It will give you a little snapshot of our life. And I want you to focus on the first few images, which are images with JRD Tata, and how beautiful she was then, and how beautiful she is now, and how gorgeous she was then. Can we play? Just tell my HR team that the video was used. He's operating from 56 participants. Yeah, 56. Fantastic. I think we had the first webinar of CII-IWN when you were the chair, right? Must have. Yeah, that was the first time we did a webinar. Mm. But a lot of people this time in finance. So I don't know. Yeah. Two days back, it worked very fine. We had the education task force meeting. Some online, some offline. So I must say, when you look at the video, one of the things that will hit you, yeah, here it is. Yeah. the woman and the lovely life that she has had so far and will continue to take forward. So, Kashmira, how did it all begin? I remember you talked to me about how you went for so many interviews, got so many jobs, and all that struggle when you wanted to start your career. First thing you said, our parents don't want us to work. You say, why don't you get married and have children and have babies, right? That happened with you too?
Well, the don't want didn't want me to work was right. The get married, have babies didn't feature.
Okay.
My dad always says she's not a problem for me. I'm happy if she stays home.
So tell us about the first step that you took in your business career. The first step.
So really, like I told you before, and I think many of you who have heard the story have heard it before, my dad never wanted me to work. So I used to fill up applications and go for interviews, because I thought it was exciting to do that. And I came very close to joining, and last minute my dad would say no. And one day there was this kind of a crumpled cyclostyle letter which came home in my name. And before I could open it, my mom did. She read it and she showed it to my dad and said, "Are you going to say no to this?" And see, which I didn't realize it was from that outer group saying, "Would you like to join us as a management trainee?" And so I didn't know what it was. And you've heard of the Tata Group, but remember, our days were not full of social media. So your information and the glamour that you have today wasn't around people and corporates, right? So then my dad said, "Okay, if it's only a 1 year program, that's fine." So I went, and that time I never understood what really was on display over there was the power of the brand. My mom telling him, "Are you going to say no to this?" And then my dad kind of relenting. So I thought when I joined Tata Share Registry, I mean, after a series of interviews and some aptitude tests, etc., I joined, and I thought I'm not going to last. Just a week is max. I didn't like the loose, and I didn't like anything, frankly. But it was the warmth of friends. It was the warmth of new friendships that were formed, the kindness which was on display. And I stayed. I stayed for 23 long years. And I don't think I've had a day's boredom. I've said that before, and I'll say it again with my hand on my heart. I don't think I've had a day's boredom. And I repeatedly tell people that if I were to look back at my own life, who creates excitement in your life? You can't be so weak to be dependent on others to do it for you. There's ample opportunity to do it yourself. You sometimes might be given a job or a role or a project which you might think, "Oh, that's no fun, I'm being sidelined," etc. It's entirely up to you to glorify that role as long as you have the role. On the CI platform itself, on one of our Women Nation summits, and you remember, Anita, you remember, Pallavi, we had India's first firewoman, and we had invited her, and it came with all the fanfare. The CI secretariat had very kindly got all the music of a fire brigade starting, and she walked down the aisle and she went on stage. And we had told her from the beginning, ke vardi pen ke aana. But she came in a glamorous sari with jhumka and all. I'm like, "Oh, this takes away all the punch." But anyway, she came on stage and she said, "हाँ, मैडम ने बोला था, पर मेरे को तो साड़ी पहनने का मौका ही नहीं मिलता है." So in such a big hotel, so I bought a sari and I came. And she said so beautifully that when she applied, when she applied to the fire college, she was the first woman who ever walked up those steps. And everyone, starting with the security guard, told her, "You've come to the wrong place. The GPO is next door." And she said, "No, no, no. I've come to the the fire institute, the training institute." And when she went in for the interview, which was all men around the table, everybody said, "You're a girl and you're not going to do well. You'll fail." And she said, "To fail also, mujhe ek mauka chahiye." So it's so similar when I look back at my life, and I'm sure when you all look back at yours as well, and you look ahead, all you really need is an opportunity, right? And our talent gets exposed when we say, "I recognize the opportunity." And I found in my life very, very often, opportunities are masked as problems. They come as problems somewhere or another, and it's up to you to say, "Do I treat this as a problem or do I treat it as an opportunity?" I treated most of them as opportunity, and I loved my life.
So from the statement of, who's going to wear a watch that's made in India and then being proved wrong and, taking on this work here, at what stage in your life did you feel that connect with a sense of inner purpose within you that, yeah, what I'm doing is where I want to be for the rest of my life. At what stage, what was the tipping point? Is there a story around that you can share?
Sure, very happily. It's not so much professional as it is philosophical, frankly. So I found that all my friends had started working and I was at home for a while. It was great. I could go to the Shamyan and have a sandwich and not get questioned. But slowly, all my friends started trickling off, right? They didn't have the time. And I found myself pretty useless. And while my parents said, look, you can do social work, I just couldn't bring myself to going to a hospital and working or going to a school. I just couldn't do that. I just couldn't. While I had a lot of empathy, I couldn't. I mean, we've done things like that when I was part of the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, including painting the cages at the Bombay Zoo. So, we've done everything. But it just wasn't my calling. And I know I literally used to pray to say, God, give me purpose. I don't know how I use the term purpose. It's not the way we saw it in corporate life, but I really prayed for that. And I joined Tata Share Registry. And for those of you who understand the registry business, we handle the shares and the debenture holders of the Tata Group and many other multinational companies as well. So you're dealing with people, you're dealing with emotion. Somebody come, like Anita said, she would come with her shares, like she would come for some work, right? Change my address, or I haven't got a dividend, or I need to add somebody's name. Or shareholders would come and say, I lost a husband or I lost a mother. How do I delete their name? I can't find my shares, or my shares got stolen. And for a lot of people in those days, that was the only asset they really had. And all the Tata Company shares were like blue chip, most of them. So they would come clinging on to their certificates. And what was very casual for us, but for some reason, I don't know, I took it on to say, no. Somebody's come, they've got to go back happy. We have to do everything that we can. We were not completely automated. We were the most automated than any other registrar, even in those days. But it was a far cry from what we have today. And slowly we built. In those days, there was no regulation. There was no SEBI. You didn't have to post your dividend warrants within X amount of days. You were the kings. But I remember once at home, I told my mom, oh, I'm so relieved. Today my XYZ company's warrants got posted. And she said, what was the date of the warrant? And I said, 1st of August. And she said, what is the date today? And I said, whatever it was. And she said, shame on you. And I was stumped. I thought I'm celebrating something. And she said, I'm ashamed to call you my daughter. She said, because you live in the lap of luxury, you don't value that interest check or dividend check coming home. But there are people who live on that money. They pay their children's school fees, they pay the milkman and the breadman after this check comes home. And you have no business to delay it if you are in a position to avoid the delay. And I sat and I cried and I said, I promised myself I will ensure that every warrant goes on time. So was this a target? Was this part of my KPIs? No, it wasn't. It was a commitment I made to myself because on a revelation, something that my mother mentioned. And then I went back to my unit. Of course, we were different units. And I said, guys, we should work to ensure that our warrants go on time. And everyone said, yeah, but we always try. We said, no. We have to ensure that if it's the first, it has to get posted before that date. And we worked towards it. And it wasn't rocket science. We could do it. And, that's how we began to change. And of course, there was so much happening in the background. There was automation going on, the digitization of signatures going on. So people had multiple priorities. But somehow, whatever little window we got, we ensured that we did it right. And it was forward fast to many years. And one day, I don't know how many of you know of the Don, Mr. Darbadi Seth. He was called the man with the Midas touch. And he used to be the managing director. He drove companies like Tata Chemicals, Tata Tea, Rallies. Absolutely wonderful person. So he was, Mr. J.R.D. Tata's contemporary. And so one day he called me and he said, what are you doing? And I was very privileged, where he would actually call me to talk to me. But then you don't realize, it was only in retrospect you realize that how fortunate you were. And I said, oh, I'm handling this stupid XYZ company. And he said, how dare you call it stupid? I said, no, I didn't mean it that way. So he told me, do you realize how fortunate you are where you work? That you get an immediate feedback for everything that you do. When a shareholder stands in front of you and you do something, he says, thank you. He says, God bless you. How many people have this opportunity of getting this immediate feedback? And I realized, that really the job I had was an answer to my prayers. And then I started taking it on even more seriously, that I had a chance to make a difference. And I had all the resources, and I had multiple bosses ahead of me, and I had teams, working with me. But I took it on to ensure that we will make that change. Of course, lots happened, and everybody played a huge role. But all of us have that opportunity to do what is right to make a difference. So when did I realize that I have a purpose for what I do? It was, I had it all along. But that was that one realization which dawned on me. Of course, in those days, we didn't have formal conference rooms, and we had no presentations, and we had no PowerPoint even. So, I mean, you had those transparencies. So nobody did anything. We had no motivation lectures. We had nothing. Appraisal systems were more flowery and subjective. We had no KPIs, no ROIs. We didn't have anything. But, and from then on, I found that, you find purpose and means follow. So before you start something, question yourself on the why. Why am I doing something? And the how comes very naturally. So I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I had.
Well, why are we doing what we are doing? Why are we doing this and why are we doing that? And I'm sure that's the first question, even when we do the ikigai, reflection, self-reflection. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And the why is the answer and who's the key to the solution. That's wonderful. I think when I spoke with you on Friday, there was a lot of, personal, your family came in at all stages, and your personal life was a part of your work life, and your work life was a part of your personal life. And I don't know, those of you who have seen the movie on the Titan, I'm sure everyone has seen it. How many times you've seen Success Desai making a kuri, maybe 10 times in the whole 5 episodes. So you can't separate the person, and that's the way it used to be. When we used to go to work, we carry our personal stuff along with us. So even in the movie, like you saw that, the Megha Matre, her mom's showing her all the boys and getting her to do all that arranged marriage parade. But, and she couldn't keep it away from her professional life. And it became a part of her professional life. But today, where we are in this world and the younger generation, we tend to divide the two. This is my personal life, and here is the button I will switch off. And when I come to work, I'm purely a professional. I'm just the role that I'm playing. And so, what would you advise the young generation today? I believe this divide between my personal life, my work life, and my, that whole switch on, switch off that we do. I don't know whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. How do you see it? And how would you advise young generations?
So this differentiation comes in when it's allocating time. How much time am I spending at work? Am I compromising on things which are important at home and vice versa? But I don't think for me there was any switch on, switch off button, and there's no magic anywhere. It doesn't happen anywhere. So you can't say that, oh, I fought with somebody at home when I go to work and I'll be the best person around. I mean, I'm sure you can, because all of us can put on a facade, but it doesn't last forever, right? And today, when you see, like, even when I was handling ethics and we used to when we used to hire as well as handle problems, we used to quickly do a snapshot of the person on social media. And, whatever you say, it leaves an impression on you. And I used to be very honest in my, when I used to do the initial, the induction programs for new joinees, and I used to tell them, I said, I'm being very open about it. This is what we do. So we do form impressions. And much as though we hold up a flag, we are not biased and we are not prejudiced, but we are all human, right? So we do form impressions. Yeah, but I don't think you can detach yourself for too long. Like, you can't beat up someone at home and come and hold up that I'm the best person. Yeah, it never works. And you've seen instances where families have come to office to complain.
Yeah.
And then what happens? Then you say, you can very formally say, oh, it's your personal life, I don't play a role in it. But did it have an impression on HR or your management? Of course it did. Right? So I think the word really is balance. Sangeeta, you would probably agree with me. Yeah, that whatever you do, be careful, right? And be careful not because somebody is watching, be careful because that's the way you want to lead your life. So don't over glorify your successes. It's good to feel important, it's good to feel confident, And don't over glorify them. And don't berate yourself too much with failures because you catch up. The road is long and you will catch up. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're not. Have that balance in you and keep introspecting every time. See, everybody who starts their career starts almost like, the girl next door or the man next door, right? And then we empower ourselves, we look at the surroundings, and hopefully we grow. Right? And everybody does the same thing. Today, if you look at when we are hiring people, right, I don't think anyone is hiring unless you're really well educated, you come from good universities, you come from good backgrounds, you've been interviewed. Everything has to be good. So I think the starting point is pretty same for everyone. And what differentiates you? It's really your value system. It's how you behave, how you respect, how you speak, how you communicate, not just what you say, but even how you say it. We spoke about that as well the other day, right? That becomes your differentiator. And you can't say, I'll be very polite here, but I'll be a rotten egg somewhere else. It just doesn't work. You'll have days where you'll do that because we are all human, right? But if you're conscious to it, you will course correct very quickly. And if I could leave one bit of advice here, it's stop blaming others for everything. I am great, but my boss is not, my partner is not, my mother-in-law is not, my maid didn't turn up on time. That's why I was rotten this morning. No, doesn't work. We are all at a stage and an age where we are responsible for what we do, for what we say, and how we do it. So if you're conscious to that, you will always course correct. There will be aberrations. You will lose your cool sometimes. You will be nasty sometimes. You will say something you shouldn't have said, but you'll hold it back, and probably go and apologize.
Yeah. You share that Koyal story?
No.
Oh, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Okay, so
I think there's a very powerful lesson in a Koyal story which has to tell. It's a very powerful lesson.
So I think, how did we start it with
something
about communication?
Yeah, something about communication and how you say it is more important.
Yeah. So she asked me, when did you realize that in life?
She's so sweet, I mean, she's really sweet. She makes me feel like as if I'm a queen when she talks to me. I remember in this very room one day, it was my birthday and there was a cake and she made me feel like I was like on seventh heaven. Even my own husband doesn't celebrate my birthday with so much gusto, I got so much love from him. And I think one of the things was, I remember even Ricky was saying, everybody wants to have Kashmira. Everybody loves Kashmira. Everybody likes Kashmira. It's like, that everybody loves Raymond. It's everybody loves Kashmira.
That's so
But
sweet.
there is a little secret over there, which is in the Koyal story.
Anyone's birthday today, we can sing happy birthday. Thank you. So I don't know, there was a question that you asked me on Saturday when we met, on Thursday when we met. And something about communication and speaking and all. And I said, I really don't know, but I'm sure when I was younger, I had a lot of responsibility. So I know I had a streak of arrogance. I know it. And the arrogance was not because, I'm in charge. It was more because I'm responsible. Damn it, this has to get done because, I made a commitment and it has to get done. And I know I used to get annoyed, but I used to course correct. And it was when I was leaving Tata Share Registry, my earlier company, and moving to Tata Capital as part of the founding team. On that farewell, there was one very sweet gentleman many people gave little speeches, and my ego was more than my ego on a high. My tears were flowing so much that I didn't really hear everything, but I certainly heard him say this. And he said, to me, Kashmir is a koyal. And I'm like, did I hear that right? What's he saying? It's a very noisy sound. And he said, have you heard a koyal and how sweet it is? He said, she sounds like that. So because she speaks like that, everybody listens. And for me, it was a revelation. I never thought I was like that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, if somebody has recognized this and everyone's applauding it, I must grow on that skill, right? So don't bury your compliments. Sometimes grow on them. So you're not being pompous about it, but sometimes someone needs to hold a mirror and say, you know what, Pallavi, I think you're great. You're great at most things, Pallavi. But somebody needs to do that. And when someone does that, please please utilize that. So I think, I don't know in what connection we started that conversation, but
So I'm saying that you have been a very firm and strong decision maker when it comes to business bottom lines. You know, being a business development person, you told me stories about when you had to say no to some business because it was not ethical. So you've had to lay it on the line, and being an ethics person, sometimes we find ourselves battling a lot. There's a lot you have to battle. And it's very easy for that to immediately reflect on your face and for you to get this cranky kind of person. But it didn't happen to you because there is a coil inside you, which she's saying that she will take those decisions and she will take those, hard nosed business calls, but in a way which is so graceful and so beautiful and so sweet and so melodious. And so that's what makes a great woman leader. I don't know with men, or I don't know whether men model of leadership is different, but for women model of leadership, don't compromise on your value, don't compromise on the decision, be soft on other people if they don't need to be soft on, but be sweet. So it's like a sugar coated knife or something, you know. But she that brings me to my next question.
So I can add a sentence here,
Yes,
it's a little bit of, they call it like talent without arrogance.
Yeah.
So you've got to do what you've got to do because you're talented enough to know the difference between right or wrong. But don't be arrogant about it. Maybe the other person didn't want to do something bad. So give them that little space.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And it's a lot to do also about the tone of your voice, because that's what's the first thing that impacts people. You know, those of you who are communications trainers and all, you know, the 80% of your communication is in the tone of your voice and in the words, in the choice of your words and the way you conduct yourself. So that tact, the diplomacy, the friendliness, the approachability, all that comes in your voice so much. And I think that's how you talked about voice modulation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So and that it began as a conscious thing, and then later on it became natural to you. So yes, being a coil is a good idea. We don't want to have that stereotype of women who are like, fighting and fighting for our rights kind of situation. So that's a wonderful insight.
So I'm going to add something here when you said fighting for our rights, and we've used this, Sangeeta, if you remember, in many of our IWN meetings to say, should the woman thump the table or not, right? And we've said, please take a seat at the table, right? Don't wait for somebody to tell you, please come. And if you are a woman at the table, please ensure that you amplify another woman's voice and request her to take the seat at the table because it's yours. But you can also help somebody else do that. Should you thumb the table to be heard? I don't think so. There are ways of getting in. But if you're just being ignored, and if you do need to do it, but do it gracefully. Do it gracefully. But if you have to be heard and that's the only way you're going to be heard, please do it. But you don't have to do it every time. So I say, please be. I would celebrate being a woman. I love my nail polish and my color and my dyed hair. I don't want to wear black suits all the time. So I have absolutely no problem in being a woman in a man's world or being a woman in a woman's world, right? And I think we should glorify the strengths that we have and use them to advantage. We're not misusing them. We're using them to advantage.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So business development is usually a hard sell job, especially in the investment banking world. It's quite a hard world out there, and the market's driven by profiteers and profit making motives. Sorry, but it's also driven a lot by greed. The world outside of Tata Capital, that is, and there is a lot of ethics issues in the world out there. So business development and ethical counselor, being the chief ethical counselor, are these two compatible roles? I would normally expect the HR person to be a chief ethics counselor, but are these two roles incompatible? How did you bring these two jobs together?
So I've been asked this question a million times, and my answer has never changed. To me, I don't see the difference. If you look back at your own lives, right? When we were in school, I'm not talking so much of college, but in school, yeah. What did your teachers teach us? Don't lie, tell the truth, don't cheat, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that, right? Normal. that carried forward at home as well, right? Your parent never told you go and copy someone if you don't know the test or hide your marks. Yeah, right? So you were taught ethics without even realizing what was happening. I was fortunate to have joined that outer group where that genre just continued. The value system was just the same. We never spoke about it, right? Those days were totally different. Nobody held up a flag that, oh, I'm so and so, I don't lie, I don't cheat. No. For me, it was like a masterclass in values every single day without realizing that it was. So you fit in very easily into that corporate mode. So I was just lucky. I was very lucky to belong to a group and work for a group, and the value system matched the way I was brought up and the way most of us are brought up, right? I don't think that's different for anyone. And much later on in life, when I got the title of an ethics counselor, and there's a little interesting story. I don't think I told you about that. So in Tata Capital, I was the ethics counselor for a long time, but I never put it on my card. My card was always only head business development because, that's what you used. And I remember I was in Delhi once at the CII, the main AGM, and everyone suddenly started talking about ethics, including all the top-notch honchos of the corporate world in India. And I'm listening over there saying, hey, we don't glorify or we don't talk about what we do in the group. We have a code of conduct, we're serious about it, we have committees, we look at problems which come to us so seriously, we report it to the board, but we don't talk about it because we take it so much for granted. And you know what? All of them were talking about was pretty nascent, like, oh, we need to form a code, we need to do this. And I'm not taking names, but these were head honchos of the corporate world in India. So I went back and I told my managing director that I'm going to put this title on the card. And he's like, do what you want. You have the title. So I actually went and reprinted my business cards to say Chief Ethics Counselor and Head Business Development. And I got everybody who got the card would say, oh, what is this? What do you really do? And it was pretty embarrassing, to talk about it. But it was a talking point for sure. Anita, I'm sure you realize that as well. Right? So it was a talking point. And 99% I got asked, business and ethics, how do you manage? And I said, how do you not manage? Like to me, there's no question. So honestly, I don't think we are at a time in life, and I don't think we ever were, where business and ethics was either or. It never was, and it never will be. Times may change, but what is right does not. You'll have cultural nuances around the world about acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Slightly they may vary, but the sense of right and wrong, the sense of true and false will never, ever really change. I was very happy somebody spoke about, did you talk about ethics in AI? Or, yeah, I was very happy to hear that. Maybe you should at some point of time tell us what exactly you do. Yeah, that was very interesting to hear. Yeah, because what is going to happen when machines are going to guide you for every single thing? If human behavior is not pristinely clear, is not pristinely right, the machine is going to learn exactly that. And is that what we want for the next generation? I don't think so. So large corporates, even families, are not built on big activities. You do have to do that in an organization, but they are built on daily little nuggets of good behavior, of value system, of saying the truth, of doing what is right, of being helpful, of taking people along with you. That is where something from, you move from good to great.
So I'm going to ask one last question. I want everyone in the meantime to frame the questions that they have, because next 20 minutes is just you and Kashmira. My last question to you, what was the toughest ethics call that you took in your entire career? The toughest ethics call?
Honestly, I don't have an answer. I thought all of them were tough.
Yeah.
Honestly, especially when you had to separate an employee, it was very, very hard. It was very hard knowing that, somebody's done something wrong and there's zero tolerance for that. But it was extremely hard. Yeah. I would actually pray before putting it up to HR. So sometimes, I would cover it up by saying, oh, we have a discipline matrix and it goes by that. I'm not in the decision-making seat that way. But it was hard. And I would always reflect back to say, as an ethics counselor, what did I not do right here? Should I have communicated more? Should we have put up more posters? Should we have had more communication? Should our processes have been tighter? What could we have done better? So, yeah, there have been a number of calls which have been hard to take, But I can also tell you, when you have a role to play, and I'm sure Anita would agree, when you've handled matters, don't take things at face value. Every person needs a chance to be heard. Today we're very casual when we brand somebody as fake and fraud and all without thinking. Look what's happening on social media today at every stage. Nobody even has played any part in a matter which is being shown, and everyone has a point of view. Like they say, closer to the budget, the amount of the Indian population that suddenly becomes an economist is not funny. It's a bit like that. So at least for us, let's pledge to say, I will not add fuel to a social media communication. Right? Because you don't know what's happened there, right? It takes two to tango, and which something may be very obvious that, oh, definitely she made this mistake or he was wrong. We don't really know what happened. So let's not do a trial by media. I think that's very, very unhealthy for any society, and particularly extremely unhealthy for the people who are suffering that. So tough calls, yeah, you do have to take tough calls, and therefore I think I started putting more and more effort into the proactive role that I was playing. Communication training, processes, holding up the flag, so that the reactive, which is handling a complaint or handling a matter, became a lot easier. So look at your role, and you can easily modify it so that you are not stressed later on, and the organization is not stressed either.
Questions from everybody? Yes.
I'll just say something about Kashmira. It's not a question, but one thing that was not, it comes out, but her humility. Okay, and she may not think it that way, but I still remember, I was, I left and we have something in common because we both started our careers with Tatas. I was there for 12 years with TCS, and she has worked with 4 Tata chairmen, which is, I think, unheard of. 4 Tata chairmen she has worked with. So that's something. Oh, okay, hi. So between 4 Tata chairmen she has worked with. The other thing is a humility, which I think goes to some other extent. I still remember she had invited me, I think we had got in touch, and she had invited me to a CII Maharashtra event. And that time I was just going to join my university back, University of New Haven. I hadn't taken the offer as yet. I didn't have a business card. She introduced me to someone very, very important. I won't mention the person. He gave his business card. And I was thinking for a second, what should I do? Because I didn't have a business card. And there is Kashmira. She says, Ranjana doesn't need a business card. She's a business card in herself. I think I will never forget that statement in my life, because I think it's very few people who can say that, Kashmira, and you can do that.
Sweet.
Secondly, I think it's just not we women who think about her. It was in Taj Lands End at the Atrium Lounge, I think. My president, Jens Fredrickson, was visiting. We were at the lounge, he first visit to India. And I suddenly see Kashmira, and I see, is it Kashmira? She's in jeans and tops, and I say, is it Kashmira? Then I look up to her and I say, hey, Kashmira, and we speak and we hug. And she had just come back from, I think, Kashmir or something, if I'm not mistaken. And then I introduce her to my president, and he's a very sharp guy. And after she leaves, he says, she's a very smart and very nice woman. I would like to be in touch with her. And later on, he did have a Zoom call with you. So I say it's just not we who think about it. I think I can go on and on about Kashmira and what she has done. But I think she's something that God has created with a lot of grace. Yes. I'm sorry I become emotional, but that is what Kashmira means to me. Thank you.
Thank you. So kind
Okay,
of you.
guys, and ladies, questions.
Ma'am,
thoughts?
virtual, you can check first.
Okay, there is a. I can't see. There is only a chat. Where is the question answer tab? There's only a chat tab. Where is the-
Ma'am, you can announce on.
Okay, everybody, you can please post your comments online in the chat window. Please post on the chat window. If you have a question, we'll request Kashmira to answer it.
We have somebody here.
But in the meantime, yes,
You started quite
just,
early.
just your name so that for the record.
Suchita Abhalekar. I see you started quite early, and when you started working, it was this lot thing of wanting to be dressing up Western. How come you all photos I see most of them are sarees, and how come you did the one tattoo like these sarees, silk saree?
I love the question.
Yes, there is so much pressure on women to wear Western, laws. I mean,
No, to be honest, I had no pressure, to be very honest. And I used to have my Tata friends who used to say, oh my God, so my waist was much smaller, like I said. So I used to wear these, tight, long skirts with long slits and big heels, thanks to which I have bunions on my feet now. But I enjoyed it. And then I began to realize that, and particularly this happened with, I'm not taking the name again because I used to go to this one financial institution and they would always treat me like a little baby. Child essay, national essay, and nobody would take me seriously. And I'm like, oh, you're very kind, but I need to get this done. And they would kind of cut me off. And I used to get really annoyed. So once or twice I took my guys from the team. And I found they had a very intelligent conversation with them. And I was like totally I said, no, this is not happening. What should I do? So I started wearing saris just to be taken a little more seriously, not within the Tata group, outside of it. And then, it just became, I just started getting known for the saris, to be honest. So when we had AGMs, annual general meetings, and we used to handle about like 30, 40 of them in a year. So I had teams and, each person was responsible for their company. But since I was handling the whole set, I would be present at all AGMs. So my teams would get very upset if I wasn't wearing a sari. Like, oh, you wore it for hers, you didn't wear it for mine. So it really, it really started like that. And there was one Tata director where, closer to in December, the last week, we normally used to have all these, funny things like today's red day and tomorrow is something day. So I remember one day we had a blue day with a scarf. So I was very excited because I had come back from New York recently and I had a very nice blue pantsuit and I had a pink scarf and I had matching shoes and bags. So I'm like really happy with myself. So I walked into Bombay House, which is the headquarters of the Tata Group, and I had the meeting. And I met one of my directors as I entered, and he said, oh, someone's looking very smart today. And I was like on cloud nine. Oh, I love compliments, not for the younger kids. And then I walked into my meeting. So after the meeting got over, one of the other directors said, someone's looking different. And I said, oh, yes, sir. Today we had a blue day with a pink scarf and something. He says, man, you have 45,000 saris. You didn't have a blue sari. And to this date, I remind the director that you told me this. And of course, he says, absolute rubbish. You made it up. I never said it. Yeah. So from then on, I was a little careful that, maybe that is how I should dress. And then I just got so used to it. It takes me like 2 minutes to wear a sari. So, and I just loved it. And a few times I would buy a chiffon, which is as expensive as a patola or a kanjivaram, because sometimes you like that. And my husband would say, oh, this is not you. Don't wear it. So thank you for the question. I love sharing the story.
So, my name is Shobna. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your story. It's so inspiring. And the way you said it, I think each one of us, could relate to it. You said it so matter-of-factly, right? And without glorifying anything. So thank you so much for sharing. But my question is, after having such an illustrious career, what next for you? I mean, this journey has been so inspiring till now. So we want to know what next lies ahead for you. What do you plan to do next?
I can very honestly say I don't know. And I'm not ashamed to say it. And for those of you who heard that song with Wear Sunscreen, go Google it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It says that don't worry because most 21-year-olds don't know what they want to do. Most 40-year-olds don't know. And I'd like to add to that, most 63-year-olds also don't know what to do. I just know one thing, that I really don't want anything onerous. I don't want that responsibility. I love getting up at 9:15 and being served my chai. So, of course, I used to get served my coffee in a train office. So, so I think I'm beginning to enjoy this lap of luxury. I think we deserve it after 38 years. And I'm not embarrassed to say that I love it. So I have time to go for lunches, which I never did. Never, ever. I was very clear. Yeah. So, but I do want to do something because, sometimes you feel that, why am I wasting, all this experience that I have? So I'm very grateful to CI when they do call me here. Thank you. But yes, it's a thought and a discussion I need to have with myself and finalize something. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes, we look forward to hearing more about your journey.
Thank you.
I may add with your higher self.
I don't know about that.
Good evening, ma'am. Swati Mishra here. My question to you was, I saw the photos from 80s to 90s. We saw you're the only woman in the men's group. And then as we transitioned to 2000s and late 2000s, 2010s, there were more females, right? So we are still in some set of sectors. You are the only woman in the men's club, right? In the men's group. How that transition has happened over the last almost 4 decades that you've seen then versus now? Like you said that the example you gave that you were almost ignored, and when the guys your
Yeah.
colleagues came and then the intellectual discussion happened. So, what transition you've seen over the last almost 4 decades in that side?
So I think we have played a lot of catch up, a lot of catch up. You rarely saw women in positions of power or leading teams, etc. But having said that, in my old company, Tata Share Registry, we were more women than men. In fact, when I would sit in an interview room and there were some men who were coming in, I would get chits inside to say, hire him, hire him. So for some reason it happened. But as you grew up the ladder, I think there were more men than women. But my whole organization was very different from anything that you'll see today. And in fact, I think one photograph which should have come up here is a beautiful picture. I don't know whether you noticed that Tata Mizuho conference in Tokyo. Yeah, so you notice that photograph with all the men and I'm there. There's one which is even larger. It's got some 40 men, including all the Japanese men and me. So everyone used to say, "Oh my God, I feel so bad for you." I said, "I'm so happy." I don't feel bad for myself at all. I think it was a great opportunity. Yeah. So do we need more women? Of course we do. Yeah. Are women talented enough to grow? 101%. And we can see it over the world. So much has changed. I mean, look at this room itself. Everybody is a powerhouse, like Anita said, right? Everybody's doing great things. Everybody has a story to tell. Everyone has the makings of a great movie. So I think I have seen that change, yeah. And I'd like to add this little bit about amplification, which I said earlier. That while we wait for the environment to open up, opportunities to open up, for men leaders to hire women leaders, etc. No, you got to do it yourself. And please try and help another woman every day. Every day. Every day. Try and do something for somebody because someone did something for you, whether it was a man or a woman, doesn't matter. Go and Google this. It's something called amplification during when Mr. Barack Obama was the president of the USA. They had something called amplification, where if there was a woman around the table, she felt she wasn't getting heard. So the women decided that if another woman raises a point which is valid, 2 other women will say, "Hey, that was a great thought. Why don't we hear it again?" Before that thought gets robbed by somebody else and is put forth somehow differently. So we have to be that change and we have to make that change. And I think that platforms like this, and thanks to Anita, Ranjana, Pallavi, everybody, where you create this platform for people to be heard, that's when your confidence goes up, your leadership skills get on, it allows you to go up.
So they say that there is a special place in heaven for women who help other women. So Kashmira has earned her place definitely in heaven, and many, many seats in heaven for Kashmira. And I think all of us, all of the people who are in IWN, IWN is a platform where we exchange ideas, we support each other. I'm quite sure in this group itself, we can find so many ways to support each other. And we often speak about that sisterhood.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like there's a sisterhood or something that we can support and enable each other just the way men do. And the men create their networks and they support and they collaborate and they form coalitions. And we find it very difficult to make an entry there because they go out for drinks and dinner, and we have to go home, and all that stuff happens. So yes, IWN is a wonderful platform for those who are online and whoever is watching this recording for the future posterity also. Indian Women's Network of the CII, particularly in Maharashtra, we are doing a lot of good work here, so many events, and there is a membership which is very, very economical. It's not too expensive. Any woman can become a member. I don't know, is it open to men also? But no, only women can become members. And please, those of you who are listening to this, spread the word to contact Reshma Hinde at CII, and she will forward you the membership forms and sign up. It's a great place to meet other women.
Thank you.
So with this, I'd like to propose a vote of thanks, of course, first and foremost to Kashmira. So much gratitude for being here and sharing your story. There were lots of other things I wanted to cover, including the office romance. You know, Rohinton was her boss at some stage.
So I married my boss.
Yeah, and
So
yes,
much for keeping corporate and
yeah. So it happened. Yeah, but it was done in those days. It was fine. It was okay. You know, and so many more things that we could have shared. And
There's a
so now
question.
there is a question that seems to have come. So let's do honor to that. Poonam says, was there a phase or situation in your professional path where you felt like giving up, especially after 40s when health challenges might have started popping up? If yes, how did you overcome?
Thank you for the question, Poonam. No. My simple answer is no. I never felt like giving up. Like I said, I didn't have a day's whatever. Was I angry? Was I irritated? Of course I was. I'm human like everyone else, right? So we all got it. But I never did. I never wanted to give up. I was very clear about that. And I don't think the situation or the environment ever pushed me to think that way either. And I think I had a great team, a great brand to work with, great leaders, fantastic people, and so much that I could do outside of the organization. Take CII. Who was saying today that I could spend more time than I could? And you said that, yeah. And I was looking back and saying, no, I was probably luckier than her. I could do it with a 9 to 5 job or a 9 to 9 job. But yeah, no, I never wanted to. So Poonam, I think I was just lucky, and you can also be that. I don't think I had any health challenges. I don't think I had any time to think about that either, right? So I learned when I was much younger, when we were growing up, we had no internet, nothing, right? So we learned from our parents, from our aunts, and we had those books called What Susie Did at 16 or What Jackie Did at 17. I don't know, it's a different generation you may not have. And I remember this one point so clearly that when somebody says, how are you? Don't embark on, I had a headache yesterday and my foot was paining today. It's just a salutation question. Just say, I'm fine, thank you, and move on. That's something I said, even if something happens, just keep quiet and move on.
So wonderful response, Kashmira. But having said that, I do know a lot of women do have health problems, particularly 40s, with perimenopause and later on menopause, and even otherwise, because whatever happens inside our bodies. We do have a forum for Maharashtra chapter called She Matters, which I started when I was the chairperson, because I am particularly interested in mental health as well as physical health. And it's the last time we had the theme of self-care. And learning about self-care, beginning on a self-healing journey, is also a part of the growth and the learning for a woman. That's an option. There is an option. You don't have to give up everything of your job just because you've got a health problem. Yes, health does give you a setback, but at the same time, self-care, self-healing can take its course, and you can continue to take care of yourself so that you can go out there and do all the things you always wanted to do.
I'm going to add to that, and for everybody who's a leader or a team manager, understand that people in your teams also could be going through some sort of struggle. Yeah, it could be some sort of, like Ranjana said, mental health, depression. It could also be physical. I mean, we've had people who fractured a hand or fractured a leg and travel by train. So we would go out of our way and say, please ensure that you leave by 3 o'clock so you don't get into a crowded train. So have that empathy. Don't wait for somebody to come and ask you, right? If somebody is pregnant and needs some amount of special care, of course, I'm not talking of the maternity leave. I'm saying even before that, as a boss, please show that little extra empathy. That's again a little window of opportunity. All of us try to hold up about, oh, we are great. HR teams do this, we do Zumba class, we do cooking class. But what really gets appreciated is this real life situations. And again, as leaders, you have ample opportunity to show this. you have ample, and most of the times you will get, oh, if we do one, it'll form a habit. Oh, really? Is everyone going to fall down and break a leg? No, of course not. And if God forbid it happens, too bad. We'll have to find solutions. So once you start this empathy, people will follow. And I'm going to share a little story time permitting. Anita, quickly. Do we have a minute? So when I was in Tata Share Registry, like I said, we used to handle annual general meetings. I don't know how many of you have ever attended an AGM, but it's like a fun fair. It's like a mela. It's terrible. And you have people who come, and there are counters, and they come to give you attendance slip and take a coupon, which entitles them sometimes to a gift box or a snack or a drink, and it's pretty chaotic. And then you're stressed inside because somebody could be complaining to the chairman of the Tata Group, I didn't get an annual report, I didn't get a dividend warrant. It's very stressful times. So I remember we had one AGM of a particularly very big Tata company, and the shareholders were misbehaving, falling over us. I want extra coupons, etc. And Mr. J.R.D. Tata, who was then the chairman of Tata Sons, he wasn't like a big strapping man. He was small, and he would meander his way into the crowd. And he's standing there where I'm standing. I'm looking up and saying, "What's he doing here now?" I got so much. And he said, "My dear girls, have you had something to drink? Don't get dehydrated."
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my house.
And this is the chairman of the Tata Group. He's going in to chair a big AGM. The whole Birla Matushi auditorium is full of shareholders. He's going to be handling questions, some of them which are not comfortable. And he's taken the time to move through the crowd to come to where we were standing. And he's like, "Don't get dehydrated." And that never left me. Because later on, when we used to handle big sessions, big operational activities of exchanging physical certificates, you'll have 5,000 walk-in customers every day. And we couldn't do that in our office. So we used to hire like a college or a school and do it for a month when the schools were closed, which is invariably when, it coincides with the heat of the summer, right? So I remember I ensured that I had a little air curtain where my people were standing, because otherwise you had fans. There were no ACs in those days, right? And we ensured that our staff was served Glucon-C every few hours. So part of our process, your responsibility, you have counter timing, you have pickup timing, you have this, you had somebody who was responsible for making that Glucon-C, serving it in paper glasses. So there are little things which make a big, big difference. So no act ever gets wasted. Now, did I do it so that I get some appraisal or some brownie points? Not at all. Absolutely not at all.
There are lots of people responding with hearts,
But the intrinsic satisfaction which you get, nobody can take away from it. Today's salary, your increment is a given. Like if you don't get that, you're not going to work, right? But what makes you stay are these little acts.
True. So there is one more question. I don't know, do we have time, Reshma?
Last question.
Yeah, it's just come up. I don't want to discourage somebody who's signed in from a Samsung SM phone. For women who are in the early stage of their career but have started late, planning a family is the greatest dilemma. How do you manage the maternity break and the sabbatical too?
So
every woman's question.
Yeah, let me start by qualifying. We don't have children, right? So I have done no nappy changing at all, but I've done everything else. Birthday parties, nuptials, weddings. Yeah. Yeah. So I've done all the happy part of looking after children, including their projects. Yeah. But I know that this is a challenge. And I have dealt with a lot of women in the organization, in my teams, who have gone through this. And I would be happier if some women actually answer that. Maybe Anita, you could answer that.
In my case, I had two children, one after the other, and I started my career when I was 24 years old, 23 years old. 22 when I got my first job, 24 when I had my first child, 26 when I had my second child. So you can imagine how early in my career my kids happened. But I kept going back to work. I just kept going back to work and managing the back end. And I don't think my children hold it against me. Later on, as they were growing up, I took a baby break. I had 3 years of baby break, but I couldn't just sit at home. I managed to do my PhD in those 3 years, came back. And the reason I took a teaching job was that I could be home at 4 o'clock when the kids came home from school. And I never once was not at home when they came home from school. So we do find our ways, we do find our methods. Everybody's path is different, everybody's solution is different. And I'm quite sure madam, you will have your path and your way. And come join IWN, share that experience, and learn what the other women have done. Maybe you'll get some inspiration from some of the others.
And I think corporate India is at a very sweet spot right now. I mean, your paid maternity leave, which we had earlier, right? And yeah, so you have, you have a lot of infrastructure which today is welcoming, and allowing people to take this liberty. So, and I think this is something you have to learn to enjoy. Right? So I might get shot for saying that, that, oh, don't worry about your promotion and it'll be a setback for a year. I mean, I don't have many women who may not agree with that, but I think you have something else to celebrate.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy,
Yeah.
but it's not impossible.
But I think the organizations are all allowing women this, this luxury, and I think the men also, because now they're giving a little bit of paternity leave. I don't know. I still think we should increase that as well.
It's only 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
So celebrate every part of your life. So, like I said, sometimes you're in the front, sometimes you're at the back, but the race is long, and you do catch up.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all the online participants as well as all the people who are present here. So many of us have showed up to listen to Kashmira and to meet each other. Let's continue chatting. For the rest of us, there is some tea and some snacks. So I'd like to really wish you goodbye. Thank you to Reshma for coordinating all this. And Vicky as well. And the entire CII back office team, especially when we ran into the technical trouble,
And to the
you were
technical
able
team.
to solve that problem. So hats off to you that you overcame the setback that you had. Yes, lots of hearts. Keep sending the hearts, folks. Keep sending hearts. Keep sending hearts. Sometimes even if we do that, it comes.
So really? That what you have to do? Where's the hard butt?
See, it comes.
Well,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure
Thank you
being
so
here.
much.
Thank you once again.
Yeah.
Finding your purpose and practice. Business
Thank you.
ethics. Lovely
Thank you very
message.
much, Anita. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
This way.
We'll take a group photo now. We lost